Hey everyone, it's been a while. It's Mel from Fortin, and I'm here to bring you a super comprehensive series of videos from my dear friend Kenway. Kenway's a prolific producer out of the Midwest, and he's worked with the likes of Joey Sturgis, Josh Schroeder, and Evan McKeever. And in this video, he's going to go through his process and philosophy for dialing in IRs. Or in this case, the cabinet section, the Fortin suites. This video is a deep dive in how Kenway would dial in his microphone in relation to the speakers of the cab, and how that relationship works in a mixed setting. So without further ado, take it away, Kenway.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got the 57 on the left and we've got the 414 on the right. For me, personally, this sounds totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But in the back of my mind, as soon as I load this up, every time I go, 414's great, but you know what you want, right? And there's a bunch of really great microphones inside of the Cali plugin. You should check them all out because they all sound very different. They all work for different reasons and for different things. But for me, for when it comes to metal and when it comes to any of the like indie stuff that I've worked on over the course of my life, you know, the 121 is going to be again, it's something solid that I know I can depend on. Should I branch out a little more? Probably, but I like how it sounds. So the first thing I usually do is go and grab that. It does something that I told myself my whole life that it's the ribbon effect. Yeah, that like that ribbon is just doing something to the sound that just is pleasant, right? Let's do a thing. Let's go ahead and just turn off the 57 altogether and let's listen to the 414, and then we can bounce that over to the 121. Yeah, and the 414 is a fantastic microphone. I've got one of them in my collection. I use it on vocals and acoustic guitar all of the time. It's a really, really fantastic mic, but I don't remember the last time that I grabbed it for a high gain distorted amplifier, because like the stock settings on this thing sound fantastic. So if you load this up and it sounds good to you, aces. That's just a win for everybody. I just know that when I come in here that it's not usually going to give me the sound that I want to get out of it. And the Royer R121, which is what the Ribbon 121 is based off of here, just it does something to the sound of a guitar. I mean, it does something to everything that it touches, honestly. It's a really great second microphone. I don't know that I've ever or would ever use it as a primary for a single or for a signal, but like as a second guitar cabinet mic, as a second acoustic guitar mic, as an extra room mic, if you're working with drums. I mean, it just adds like a fullness, a bigness, a warmth to the sound, the sound that just I've not really been able to replicate with any other tool. And it's so difficult to explain what it's actually doing. There's just something with like the low mid range, I think specifically, that it just does something to it, man. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. So here's the 414, and I've turned the 57 off altogether. So we are listening to the 414 at its default position inside of the cab sim by itself solo. And we'll switch to the R121. So obviously a huge difference. And I will say, I think that a lot of people, and I'm even going to throw myself in this bucket before I really understood what this part of like these plugins was really doing. I think a lot of people would switch to the Ribbon and they're going to hear that drastic change, that drastic shift of like the top end going away, that nice, like kind of like that crisp sound that the 414 has going away. And I think that your gut reaction to that might be negative, and I'm going to explain a little bit why this makes sense in what we're doing. So guitar players specifically, and I can say this being one of them and having been around one of them, or been around many of them my whole life, they struggle with two very specific things that are probably at the end of the day the most important to get right when you're recording guitar. And that is that they always turn their bass, their low end, up way too high, as well as they do the same thing for the treble and the presence when we're talking about real amps here, right? And so because that's what sounds good to them when they sit and listen to themselves play guitar by themselves, in front of their amp by themselves, right? But in reality, when you get into the mix, while that is a tone that you like to hear with your guitar by itself, when you add that into a mix, then you're going to start interfering with way other elements that need that space way more than you do. And there are a lot of things that we can do to get the feeling of those frequencies back without actually having them. And so I would really challenge you that if you switch to the R121 and you listen to it at first and go, "Ooh, I don't like that," that's normal. Honestly, and it's probably fair because it's not going to be what you're used to, not what you're expecting, but it's also going to force you to think about what your guitar signal is doing in a much different way. And that's part one. And part two of that is that naturally, when you are a recording engineer and you are mixing guitar, you're going to throw away a lot of those high end frequencies later anyway. So why not do that in a way that's a lot more natural to the sound of the guitar by using a microphone that is commonly used to record guitars that doesn't have those frequencies present, versus having to try to get rid of them later artificially with an equalizer or some other kind of step, right? The hunt for perfect tone never ends, because at the end of the day, the thing that sounds good to you right now isn't going to work in every single application that you need it to. So what we were just talking about with step one here, right, is that we want to try to solve I always want to try to solve as many of the creative tone issues that I can, starting with the tone itself, right? And so we noticed, and let me just play this again real quick so that we remember where we're at. So we noticed that when we make this shift here, the tone gets bigger sounding, but it loses all that high end, right? And so maybe we want the guitar to sound crispier, or like what it does on the 414, but without all of that fizz sound coming back. So the first thing that I look at is gonna be cool. I know I like the R1, I know I like the 121. I like where we got when I turned it on, and we're still just listening to the ribbon microphone, by the way. But I feel like I need some of that top end back that I'm now missing because we turned off the 414. And so what we can do then is move the microphone physically closer to the cone of the speaker, because as we talked about earlier, as you get closer to the cone, you're going to the sound is going to get a little bit brighter, a little bit thinner, and a little bit more harsh. But harsh doesn't have to mean bad. It's just changing what the tone sounds like. So if we just take this and move it closer, you can tell as it gets closer and then directly right on top of the cone that a lot of those high-end frequencies come back. But then still, if you listen to that sound right here versus the 414, where we started roughly with that, they sound pretty similar now at this point, right? We got a lot of that top end back, and I wouldn't leave it directly over the cone like that. But it just goes to show that by moving the microphone into a completely different place, you can start to give it qualities of different microphones or different tools or different amps. I mean, the spectrum of sound that you can get just by playing with this one tool is insane. But yeah, so when this thing loads up into the default position, it's not giving me the high end that I want out of it, because I do still want some of that back. I just don't want as much as what the 421 is going to give me. So if I'm going to place this guy, probably somewhere right in there, I'm going to guess. So now that I like where that one's at, let's turn the 57 back on and see what we've got. And so you can see already when we throw the 57 in, the soundscape completely changes again. We get a lot more of that body back. We get a lot, and honestly, it sounds like a smoother, like what you'd more expect out of a guitar sound experience. And that's because the 57 and the R121 sound so different. Like there are two such different microphones with way different tonality qualities that when you use them together, you're going to get a much fuller sound. Well, honestly, A-Bing the sound like what we were just doing there for the demo is usually the best way, because you can listen to, and this is something that maybe other plugins have gotten with it, but a lot of the ones that I've used in the past didn't have the ability to turn off individual microphones. The fact that you can do that with the Fortin plugins is already huge, right? So use the tools that you have at your disposal to make your decisions, right? So we can sit here and I can listen to the tone, and if I turn off one microphone or turn off the other one, you're going to hear the tonal qualities of those microphones disappear and come back. You can use that to listen for whatever you're hearing that you don't like or that you do like. First, I think I'm going to play around with the 57 a little bit, because I'm pretty stoked on how this sounds, but I want to make sure that there isn't something that I like more, right? So let me just play with that a little bit. Pretty similar, but I think that's about where I like that one. Honestly, to me, this kind of gives you the experience of being able to shove an amplifier in a closet and send your a very underpaid intern in without earplugs to move to move the microphone around until you scream at him to stop. Because like, I can pull knobs and move knobs and turn them all day, but there's something about just having the unlimited possibility of wherever I swing my mouse at this exact moment is going to change what I'm hearing. And at the end of the day, I don't really care how far away the microphone is from the amp in this like virtual space. I don't really care how how close it is to the cone. I care what it sounds like. And so if I can just grab it and kind of throw it all over the place to figure out quickly what qualities I'm affecting, what I'm changing, and then find that sweet spot, that's what matters to me.
There you have it, Kenway's process in dialing IRs and microphones. So if you have any questions for Kenway or myself, please leave it in the comment sections, hit the bell for notifications, thumbs up the video if you liked it, and sub to the channel if you haven't already. So stay tuned for part 2, where Kenway will be dialing in the EQ section of the Fortin suites and showing y'all how each frequency responds and why it affects the guitar tone so heavily. Hope you all dug this and took something away from the video. Again, I'm Mel from Fortin Amps, and I'll catch you on the next one. Stay tuned for part 2.